My name is Ari Rockoff. I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Vice President at the Religious Zionists of America. I began just this past week, coinciding with the World Zionist Congress. We have a very brief program today. Our time is short. Our presenters are 6 hours ahead in Israel, so we want to be sensitive to that. As we all know, this past week, actually exactly last Thursday, our community, our Mizrachi delegation, achieved a really historic achievement that we're truly proud of. This achievement, just to be very clear from the outset, was a tremendous effort globally, and we salute Rav Doron Perez, Gal Grunwald, Harvey Blitz, and all those who led this delegation last week. But it would not have been possible without the leadership of all partner organizations comprising the Orthodox Israel Coalition, and I'm going to name them all: the Orthodox Union, Amit, Young Israel, RAGE, Russian American Jewish Education Organization, Touro College, Torah Metzion, B'nai Akiva, Yeshiva University, RZA. All these organizations have achieved something really unprecedented. We received more votes this past election than in the past 30 years in America. It's an amazing achievement, and as we'll hear, it has led to tremendous accomplishments that transpired last week. We all have been reading the media, and there's been a lot of confusion about what exactly happened in the room, as they say. And so today, we have the great privilege to have Rabbi Doron Perez, Chief Executive Officer of World Mizrachi, and Gael Grunwald, the newly appointed head of the Department of Education of the WZO, to present to us and share with us what happens in the room, which we are really eager to hear about. And once again, we thank you and salute you for all the efforts. We know that what took place in that room was not a one-time event. It really was many, many hours of work around the clock for many months ahead, and I'm sure since then as well. So we turn it over to you, Rav Doron, to Gael, and just one last point in terms of process. Our time frame, as I said, is short. We're going to end the program officially at 3:30. This is being recorded, so for those who want to review it or share it afterwards privately with those in their communities, absolutely, we will share that with you. We will take questions in the chat. We will be sharing those questions with Rav Doron and with Gael, and we will also stay on afterwards for those who have time and would like to stay on at 3:30. Rav Doron and Gael are not yet in pajamas, I don't think. I'm looking over there. No, so they've agreed graciously to stay up a little bit later so we can ask questions more directly. So thank you again for all joining. Thank you, Rav Doron. I'll turn it over to you, and then Gael, I know, will speak after.
Thank you very much, Rav Ari. You can all hear me okay, Rav Ari? All good?
Yep.
Okay, great. So thank you very much. It's really an honor and a privilege to be able to share talk to the critical issues which took place behind closed doors, some of which we've already communicated over the last week on our different WhatsApp groups and emails, but it's really an honor and privilege to be able to share this with you, with my friend and colleague Gael Grunwald, who will be speaking after me. And Gael and I, in fact, were both the ones from World Mizrachi responsible for the election campaign in the United States, working obviously very, very closely with the whole team in the US and all of our board members and delegates, and also Rav Ari and Rav Yehuda Friedman, Hart Levine, and so many people who were involved from all the different organizations that Rav Ari mentioned in this campaign. So I just want to first and foremost say a big mazal tov to Rabbi Rockoff for assuming your position with your baptism of fire, coming into your position at just in time for the World Zionist Congress, and for putting this wonderful evening together. And to say a big shakach to the board and the presidium of the RZA for such an inspired choice. Rav Lenny Matenki, Marty Oliner, Dr. Yoni Agatstein, all three of you, the presidium and the members of the board, for such an inspired choice. And we look forward to working so closely together with you, Rav Ari, and the RZA, and of course, all the affiliate organizations which you mentioned as part of Orthodox Israel Coalition. And it's also an opportunity for me once again to say a very special thank you to all of the ambassadors, the delegates, the alternates, all of you for the incredible role that you've all played in this whole process, in the selection campaign. And each and every one of you and the organizations you represent have played a major, major role. I want to make a particular mention just to thank Chairman of the OU, Moshe Bain, and to Alan Fagan, the outgoing Chief Executive, and all at the OU for your partnership in this, in making Rabbi Yehuda Friedman available to us in such a gracious way, and both Rabbi Ari and Rabbi Hart Levine, you so graciously made available on so many different levels, and we enormously appreciate it, and really going above and beyond. And we thank you for your partnership in this. Again, all the other organizations, RZA, and everyone played a major role. I think the OU really went above and beyond in terms of personnel on the ground, and we thank you very, very much for that as well. And again, a very special thank you to each and every one of you and your organizations for the incredible partnership in this coalition. So I'll start for a few minutes. Gael will talk thereafter. We'll answer questions toch kadei. And as Rav Ari said, will be time for those who would want to stay afterwards. As is always the case with these type of political negotiations, so often battles are fought in the media. This is the first time that I've had such a first-hand experience to see what's fake news, what's not fake news, what's really going on behind the scenes, what's going on in front of the scenes. Different people with their own agendas are leveraging media and other organizations as much as possible to apply tremendous political pressure in order to achieve a particular aim. And it was quite amazing to see, and I'm glad we have this opportunity to share from it inside the room of what took place in these really negotiations. So our team was led by by Avram Duvdevani, fondly known as Duvdev, the most senior member in the World Zionist Organization, himself for the last 10 years being the head of the World Zionist Organization, a person with enormous experience, and played a major role. And of course, Gael and myself and a number of others were all part of the negotiation team and involved at every step of the way. So the first thing I want to say is that the achievements in terms of positions were incredible achievements, unprecedented achievements. And first and foremost, the delegates who we represented from around the world and the organizations in the United States and all of our Mizrachi branches from around the world who support us in this, our commitment was first and foremost to them to ensure that a strong voice of religious Zionism, of Torah Eretz Yisrael, of these dual values, of the deep commitment to Torah and the centrality of Eretz Yisrael and the state of Israel, our values would be loyally and well represented and achieve success in these negotiations to ensure that the leadership positions taken are significant and reflect our strength and our positions. And I want to say we're thrilled with the results. And I know that you're familiar, but I'll just run by quickly with these achievements. Number one, the fact that there is a religious Torah observant Jew as the head of the Keren Kayemet Israel, as the chairman, is unprecedented. It is true that historically there have been co-chairmen. Duvdev himself was co-chairman 10 years ago. Rabbi Meir Bar-Ilan in the 40s was co-chairman. But the fact that the number one position, the chairman, is headed by an Orthodox religious Jew, a Dati Lomi Jew, is unprecedented, and it is remarkable. Indeed, it is only for 2 years. The positions are normally for 5 years, but the reason that it's for 2 years and not 5 years is there had to be rotations. Many of these positions have had to have rotations. Everybody wanted the very influential Keren Kayemet position, and therefore it was very clear from the outset that it had to be a rotation. In the end, Mizrachi has the position for 2 years that will be fulfilled by Avram Duvdevani Duvdev, and for 3 years thereafter by the Likud. And the Likud got it for 3 years because they are the biggest group because of both their political party in Israel, together with World Likud together, making them the biggest siyah. And we were the second biggest, and hence us 2 years and them 3 years. But that is very significant in and of itself. The second very important thing to mention is, as Mizrachi is first and foremost educationally driven, it's about our values, the politics, and the representation is there to serve our values of Torah Eretz Yisrael. Our focus in Keren Kayemet is going to be very much on education, and therefore we secured within the coalition agreement a significant portfolio in the education department of Keren Kayemet Israel, a focus on education. They have a large department which deals with education. We ensured that this department will focus on shlichut to communities around the world, to look for ways to partner with caring leadership programs to ensure that there is a significant representation and partnership of shlichut programs that will directly serve communities around the world. So that's the dual achievement in terms of Keren Kayemet. A powerful position of tremendous land ownership and land development throughout Israel. It's in many ways the bank of the national institutions because it's a very wealthy and very large organization, and it supports itself and also the World Zionist Organization. A significant part of the World Zionist Organization budget actually comes from the Keren Kayemet. So it's a very significant position, both in terms of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael and developing the land, and at the same time, the education department, our values are first and foremost Torah values, education, chinuch, Jewish identity and destiny. That's number one. Number two, a second very significant position that we specifically wanted was the education department of the World Zionist Organization, which also focuses on shlichim, all the morim shlichim, the teachers who go out on shlichut to communities around the world are dispatched through this education department, and it does broad educational activity with a focus on shlichut. And again, as World Mizrachi, who sees its role as serving diaspora communities, ensuring that our positions are there, focused on our communities around the world, who are the significant delegates as part of our movement. We indeed requested this, and we thank God achieved this. So Gael Grunwald, who will speak after me, is the incumbent, and he will chair this important department. And he is also at the same time very significantly been appointed as the deputy chairman of the World Zionist Organization, also a very important position. So we're thrilled about that as well. Thirdly, the religious affairs department of the diaspora. Of religious affairs for the diaspora, and under the leadership of Mizrachi, and over the last number of years under Rabbi Yechiel Wasserman, we also managed to once again secure this department. Importantly, two important things in terms of one, Rabbi Wasserman will actually be only fulfilling this position until the end of June. And thereafter, he'll be joining us back at Mizrachi for a role over the coming years. And we look forward to him fulfilling a role with us in terms of community development and liaison. But this particular role, he will be fulfilling for the next 8 months. And he will then be replaced by Ro'i Avuxis, the very successful Mazkal, or director of World B'nai Akiva, who has been incredibly transformative the last number of years, and is bringing in younger blood. And a very successful young man. He's 45, and he will be coming to this position in the next 8 months. So, in short, well, maybe one other thing just to add, that after 2 years in the Keren Kayemet, since we're swapping with the Likud, we will get. They have 2 years in the what's called the Department for Chativat Hitcheshvut, for Rural Development in Israel of the World Zionist Organization. In fact, Gael has been the head of for the last 5 years, and they will be swapping, i.e. Mizrachi will be in the position of head of Kakal for 2 years, and then for the remaining 3 years going to Chativat Hitcheshvut, and vice versa for the Likud, which is them 2 years in Chativat Hitcheshvut and then 3 years in Kakal. So if I just zoom out, I say two things. It's been an unbelievable achievement, a fair achievement, certainly not overreaching, as I'm going to say, a fair achievement based on our electoral success. And secondly, reflecting that the values that are core to us, Torah, Israel, the strong connection to Torah and Jewish identity and destiny for Jews all around the world, focus on education in all of these positions. And secondly, of course, mitzvat Yishuv Haaretz, continue to build and grow the land in every possible way. So that's, in short, these achievements. Secondly, and really importantly, what happened in the room, and there has been so much misinformation about this, and I just want to spend a few moments, I want to end in the next 3 or 4 minutes to give Gael a chance to speak. As follows, and then we'll answer some of the questions, but I want to give Gael a chance. So there's been so much misinformation about this. Mizrachi I can tell you, without any shadow of a doubt, played an incredible role to unify all the parties in this. What you might not all be aware is that the gentleman's agreement is that there is always a wall-to-wall coalition. It's not like the American elections coming up or the Israeli elections where whoever wins ultimately puts their government together and becomes the president or prime minister in Israel and puts a whole government together. And even if you win by 1% of the vote or a percentage point or less than that, you make up the entire government. That's not the case in terms of these elections. You have the majority, and even if you put together a majority, you still have to create space for everybody based on their relative strength. And I can say that this was 100% the case. I can tell you, I don't want to say too much in this call because I know it's being recorded, but I can tell you there were many other parties to the right and to the left of us whose single-minded focus was only on what can their individual gain be. I can tell you without any fear of contradiction that there were many parties, and I don't want to mention them by name, who were at the same negotiating with multiple parties that had there not been a right-wing coalition initially, they would have gone with a left-wing coalition, and they were riding two horses until the end and just leveraging to make sure they would get the best deal for them no matter who they would go with. And I can say that without fear of contradiction. I do not want to mention which parties these were, but Mizrachi was not like that. Mizrachi was all the time trying to create obviously great gains for ourselves based on our electoral position, but always trying to be a unifier. And that's what Mizrachi has always been. Since Rabbi Ryan founded Mizrachi in 1902, the Merkaz Ruchani, short for Mizrachi is short for Merkaz Ruchani, to be this spiritual center, to be integrally involved in the Zionist movement, to bring spirituality to it and to play a major bridging role. And this is what happened nonstop in these negotiations. And I can say another thing, had there not been a right-wing, firstly, there was a right-wing coalition signed a week before the final agreement was signed. And I can tell you that if there was not a right-wing coalition, there would have been a left-wing coalition, which was about to be signed as well. So how this works, just to let you know, it always works that you put together a majority of parties who sign the initial coalition to ensure that there's a majority. And in your initial coalition agreement, you leave space for the other parties to sign on and to have positions based on their relative size. And that's what happened over here. It is true that in the week afterwards, there was tremendous pressure from the center left, using the media very, very well to cry Gewalt and etc. And it's with the top PR companies. And understandably, firstly, there has been a shift in the national institutions. It's the first time there's ever been such a move to, that for the first time, the political and religious right in broad terms has the majority of delegates. That's a major shift. As I said in my voice messages, liken that to the Mapach of 1977, where after 30 years of Mapai and Labour leadership, Begin came into power, and politics in Israel and leadership has shifted since then. And many struggle to accept it, even till today, don't fully accept that. But that's what happened over here. And no matter how this would have been run, there would have been people with different views of, feeling hard done by and taking time to come to terms with it. What I can say is that, yes, there was an initial right-wing agreement signed, and had that not been signed, there would have been a left-wing one. And then the role was to ensure that the left would be able to have positions commensurate with their size, and that's what happened. And that was all the behind-the-scenes trading. You might have seen, I saw in the group, appointed Ruth Calderon to the position of president. Here's a great example. The president of the, which is really a titular position of the WZO, has not been filled. Been empty for many years, but here they found this position in the constitution, and this was a way of giving a party a position that hasn't been fulfilled until now in order to this balance, and many such creative political solutions done in order that everyone has their representation. So I want to hand over to Gail. There's so much more to say, and I'll leave to Gail to complete, and I'll say a few words about some of these questions afterwards, but that's what happened in the room. And until the last minute, hours of sleepless nights, it was to ensure that ultimately there would be agreement that everyone could sign on, and the agreement would reflect the relative size of all parties. And Mizrachi played the major role in bridging the gaps to ensure that ultimately the agreement needs to be wall to wall, which it always was going to be, but needed somebody to play that role, and that was played unflinchingly by Mizrachi. So I want to hand over to Gael. There's a lot more to say. That's just al qtzeh mazleg, as they say in Hebrew. Just the tip of the iceberg, but to hand over to Gael, who also has played an unbelievable role in this to fill in the gap.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Shalom to everybody. I just want to add two things. The first point that I would like to say is, of course, I would like to thank you for being a member of the Mizrachi, for being together with us, and only because of you we achieved what we achieved. So really, I'm not going to mention the organization and the names, but all of you, kol hakavod to you, and it's of course something very, very important for us, that what we achieved. I just want to say one word regarding what Rav Doron has said before. I'm really, really, really very proud, and you can be very proud to be a member of the Mizrachi. The Mizrachi is the only organization, the only party. Because of him, because of the Mizrachi, we achieved a coalition from one side to another side. As it was said, there was an agreement already signed a few days before the Congress, an agreement signed by the right wing. But the Mizrachi was the only organization, was the only party which pushed to be sure that everybody will be around the table. For us, because the Mizrachi is seeing his role as me'ached, to make the union, to make the unity, to make the achdut, we were those who decided that we don't have an agreement only for the right wing. And yes, we want to have the conservative around the table. We want to have the reform around the table. Because we do believe that the achdut is more important than to get another tick, another role, another tafkid. And that's why I'm so happy to share with you exactly what we achieved last week. And due to the spirit of the Mizrachi, we got what we got. And the most important thing that we did, that because of us, Baruch Hashem, we have today an agreement from wall to wall, from everybody is running this organization. And that's why you, as an ambassador of the Mizrachi, you should tell people that because of Mizrachi, today we have everybody around the table. And I don't want to talk about the other. We really want to have only a very, very short, very small, very short coalition. We didn't agree about that, and that's why we got what we got. So that's, if you want, the picture as we, thank God, we push to have this situation, and again, thank you. And again, you can be proud, very proud, to be a member of this very important organization here in Israel, and of course in Chutz La'aretz. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gael. Thank you, Doron. I'm just going to pose a few questions to you, Gael, and to Rav Doron that are coming in the chat. One question with regard to media. Rav Doron, if you could take that, where are we in the media? Let's start with that question, and we'll read them through.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so of course there needs to be a major media campaign, and there is going to be. Literally from this evening after this call, we have a PR company who's going to be working significantly, that we've been working significantly with. We just been putting together the different articles and strategy plan, and that is indeed going to be happening from this evening. There have been different articles, and Marty's written some wonderful articles, and other people have written some nice articles. It's going to be a systematic PR plan from this evening over the course of the next week and month to deal with systematically, both in Israel and of course in the United States, in terms of this. So yes, you'll be reading about it and hearing that in the coming days, weeks, and months. So that's in terms of that. Any other questions? I see a number of questions. Should I answer them?
So go ahead. You can take that one by one then.
Okay. So
just for Jerome, for one moment, I see that we're close to 3:30. So I want to just make sure that we're glad you can confirm, Doron and Gael, to stay on a little bit longer to take questions. We'll be sharing this video recording privately. It will not be public, but we will be sharing it privately for those who want to share it carefully with constituents. We just ask that you do it very cautiously so it does not get into the wrong hands, especially in light of the concern with media. But go ahead, Doron, you could take the questions, and Gael as well directly there in the chat.
So should we be going past 3:30 and people will leave if they want to? Is that how we're going to do it?
That's what we'll do. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So obviously everyone should feel free to leave whenever you'd like, because we're going to go beyond the 3:30, but just to be able to have an opportunity to answer the different questions. In no particular order, as I've seen the questions. There was a question regarding rotating position, what's going to happen in 2 years' time. So there will be one additional position available in 2 years. There hasn't been a final decision regarding that. Avram Duvdevani will be, in all likelihood, in 2 years' time, as we said, leaving the Keren Kayemet, so there will be an additional position. We'll relook at things then. There might be one additional position available, but we have time to decide that. There was a question regarding the education portfolio. It was in the hands of the Labour Party last time round, and everybody focuses and takes the office in, like any ministry or any position of leadership, in the direction that you want to take. And we of course want to bring a very, very strong religious Zionist flavor to it. Most of the shlichim, by the way, who go out as teachers today through the ministry are actually religious Zionists. It's actually very interesting. So we want to strengthen that, and as I say, it's a very important portfolio. Yeah, Bakasha.
I just want to say one word regarding these departments. Not because I'm going to lead it, but for us as a member of the Mizrachi, is something very, very important. We are going to send more than 200 shlichim morim all over the world, meaning that we are going to have the hashpah, the impact, on thousands and thousands of children, students all over the world, through these shlichim that you are going to send. And I would say that the Keilah is probably best by the shul, divided by the shul and by the school and by the youth movement. So we are going to be very, very relevant among these kids, these children. And I have to tell you that it was a decision done by the Mizrachi that we want to be there, even on the cheshbon of another department. But for us as a Mizrachi, it was very important to be sure that we are going to be to many in the field of education. And I would like to say that we are going also, please God, to invest on preparing teachers all over the world. It's something that we are going to work on that. And I think, again, it's something very, very positive for the Mizrachi. Thank you.
Thank you, Gael. I'm just going to keep going, Gael, and answering questions as they come. And please feel free, obviously, at any time to comment. There was a question regarding what did we give up on? In all negotiations, they're give and take. We certainly gave up on certain things that, in order for this, for this unity, as did pretty much every party. One of the things we gave up on, there were two subcommittees in Keren Kayemet that in the original agreement we would have had. They were subcommittees not related to education. There are a number of subcommittees in Keren Kayemet regarding human resources and acquisition. And we felt at the end of the day, if the Likud would be doing that, that's fine. We don't have to, the Likud also had to give up, by the way. One of the things that was never going to fly was it's a bit technical, but the gentleman's agreement is that if the right wing or the left wing have the chairmanship of Keren Kayemet, then the head of the committee has to go to the other side. So last time around, the left wing, the Labour Party, had the chairmanship of Keren Kayemet, and therefore the Likud had the head of the finance committee. This time around, as we said, Mizrachi and Likud have the chairmanship of Keren Kayemet, and the Likud also had the finance committee. So that was one thing that Duvdev said from the word go, that's not going to fly. And the only reason that happened, I'll tell you, is because the Likud has got many different, there were different, factions within the Likud who only sort of made up a week before the end, and each one was pushing for the representation that they wanted. And that was one thing that and then it didn't. Eventually the right wing had to give that up to the coalition, to the left, and that was overreaching. So I would say there were one or two things in that original agreement which were overreaching, and they're always going to have to be given up, and therefore that is what happened. So we gave up on two different subcommittees that we realized for the sake of unity and for, we're going to need to do that. We were prepared to, we're not prepared to give up on, and those are the things that we fought for. That's in terms of that. There's a question on, did we renege on anything? Was there anything that we reneged on in terms of achieving this, this deal? Absolutely not. All the things that were critical and important to us, we fought when we achieved it. And it's the same with the others, by the way. Everyone had to get this. Everyone on the right came out of this agreement feeling, and I spoke to all the different parties on the right who were part of the original coalition. They all understood that they had to give up something. Ultimately, the wall-to-wall agreement is the spirit of the national institutions, and that's what happens. And ultimately, everybody had to give up a little bit. Other parties had to also share. There's a number of rotations. Other parties had to, rotate certain committees and certain positions, or share them, or create a head of a committee, a co-head of a committee, and everybody had to do this in order to create, the space for everyone else, which was achieved. I'll say one other comment you want to refer to. There's a question about college campuses. Absolutely, I have to say that Mizrachi are very privileged to have partnered over the last number of years with OU-JLRC, both on college campuses in the United States and on 2 college campuses in Israel. And this is a partnership that we hope to expand and to grow. In fact, we just started this last week a track in one of our leadership programs, which is an OU-JLRC track. We've got 7 couples specifically being trained for. And the aim of going for these education portfolios is to strengthen this partnership, and to, we have a student division called Yavne Olami that Mizrachi has had for many, many decades. Many of you'll know it from college campuses in the United States. The Yavne brand today, we share with OU-JLRC because of the incredible work that OU-JLRC is doing on campuses in the United States. So we're all into partnerships because when we have all the same values, and we partner wherever we can so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And absolutely, college campuses are going to be something that we plan to invest in and support in every possible way through these elections. Gael, is there anything else you would like to comment on?
Yeah, I just want to be sure that everybody understand me regarding the role of the shlichim. We are talking about shlichim morim who are teaching in schools. We are not talking about students in university. We are talking about students in schools. And of course, we are thinking also to have programs for teachers all over the world, not just shlichim by sending them to teach and to spread our message, but also having a program to preparing those who are teaching all over the world. And it's probably one of the big components of the message that the Mizrachi wants to spread all over the world. Meaning, we have program for students, we have the youth movement through Bnei Akiva, and now we are going to focus our work with the school. And as it was said, even school who are not, I would say, religious school, wants to have religious shlichim, and so of course we are going to work on that. Thank you.
I'll just perhaps add a point just based on one or two of the questions. One of the questions is, what did the other parties achieve? Some of the other religious right-wing parties achieve, which can complement everything that we're doing. So firstly, of course, as I said, Kakal, Keren Kayemet, is shared between Mizrachi and the Likud. It seems that the person from the Likud who's likely to get that position is a senior member of parliament of the Likud called Chaim Katz, and struck up a very, very strong working relationship, and they're already working now on things together. So we'll be swapping that position with the Likud as well as the Chativat Hashvut, the settlement department. So there's already very close cooperation in terms of that. The education portfolio in the Keren Kayemet will be headed in the first 2.5 years by RZA-Kodesh. And we also have a close relationship with RZA-Kodesh In fact, some of the individuals in RZA-Mizrachi, we already have, Ner Le'elef, which supports some of our leadership programs, and Olami. We already have close working relationships. And what was good about this is that already close working relationships, which are mutually beneficial, have been strengthened over here. So as the comment made by Debbie Isaacs in the chat about partnerships, we're absolutely looking for partnerships where there's shared vision and values, even if there's sometimes differences of opinion and ideology, there's so much in common, and there's ways, because the fight against assimilation and identity we all share. And so that's a portfolio that we look to be working very closely on education, both in the World Zionist Organization and in the Keren Kayemet. The World Zionist Organization is headed by Yaakov Chagwell from the Likud, who is also an observant Jew. It's quite unusual that the head of the World Zionist Organization and Keren Kayemet are Torah observant Jews. That is not something to be taken lightly. It's quite an achievement. And there are many, there's and there's partnership there as well. And also have to say, there's many, many of the parties on the center left as well. There's so much room for partnership and collaboration. And I sense with many of the parties a tremendous sense of respect and trust, and giving people what they duly deserve. And I think there's going to be a lot of cooperation. And this coming, in this particular, the next 5 years for the Congress. Gail, anything you want to add?
Yes, I just remember now. Sorry?
You get the final word.
Yeah, no, I just want to give you an example of the Ardut that you are talking about it. We have an agreement with Derech Eretz. Derech Eretz, this is a party who is running by Tzvika Hauser, a not religious guy. But he told us, the reason that I want to be together with the Mizrachi, there are two reasons. One reason, we do believe on the value that the Mizrachi represents. And secondly, we know that we can trust you. And if you say yes, it's yes. And if you say no, it's no. And I think that it's a big kavod for us to know that people want to be together with the Mizrachi, and they're ready to get a deal with the Mizrachi due to the fact that we are trying, even though that we are dealing in a political issue, we are trying to be mensch, we are trying to be yashar, and I think that it's something very, very important. And yes, Sandra is right. Sandra says that exactly the same thing with Cherut and Karma. We also have an agreement with them only for these two reasons: the values of the Mizrachi and the fact that we are trying to be Anashim Yesharim. And as the Natziv says on the Akdama on Sefer Bereshit, to try to be honest people, to be Yesharim, and that's what we are trying. I think it is a part of the Kiddush Hashem that we need not to forget what is the role that we have when we are a member of the Zionist movement.
Rav Ari, could I just add one concluding comment from me?
Final word from Jerome.
No, just one thing, just to reflect. I think it's remarkable. Two things I found remarkable in this process. Our sense, and I'm sure many of you in the United States who've sort of been involved, this is my first time that I've been involved in these elections. I've been a little over 5 years in my Mizrachi position, so I don't have the historic background that many of you do and know, but I've really sensed a renewed interest in these institutions, which for many were archaic and staid and really not much seemed to be changing. And it was only the people involved on the inside who were interested. So not only were the numbers in the United States, there was also a tremendous diversity. The fact that RZA-Mizrachi are involved in this is historic. Notwithstanding, I saw that Aguda just came out with a statement distancing themselves from the Jerusalem program and trying to walk this tightrope of, these ideological hula hoops. But what's at the RZA-Mizrachi and members of the Yadut Torah in Israel are officially part of the World Zionist Organization. I felt that some of the people who walked into the building to sign above RZA-Mizrachi was probably the first time they've ever been into that building. It's unbelievable. It's historic. Look at the power of the World Zionist Organization. And there are also people on, the extreme political left, which, the Hatikva slate, which are questionable, some of them, even the Zionist bona fides. But And there's something, this broad round table, does it exist anywhere else in the world? Is there another organization like the WZO, which today brings Jews from across the political and religious divide in one large round table, each one according to their understanding what's important to the Jewish people? I think it's an incredible, A, to see the reinvigoration of the World Zionist movement, and B, its diversity. And I think it's a very, very exciting time in, please God, the years ahead to reinvigorate our message and ensure that the Zionist message and the religious Zionist message, Torah Israel, is as relevant and transformative as ever before.
Thank you, Doron. Thank you all for making the time. We do not take this for granted. And thank you all for extending beyond the 3:30. As I said, we have recorded this entire conversation. It will be shared with each of you. We ask you just to use discretion in terms of sharing it and so forth. But speaking of sharing it many different times and was addressed, we do have a PR agency that is plugged in actually now to this webinar. A release will be going out very, very soon, which we will share with all of you. We will also be including talking points that all of you can distribute within the communities that you engage with and lead, and with appropriately beyond that. And hopefully between our PR media strategy and implementation, the messaging, this is a moment of celebration, a moment of accomplishment. And I think that's a really important point that we need to, sometimes being the underdog you have a different strategy. And sometimes when we achieve, I think that's what makes Mizrachi, that's what makes this very unique time. And that's what really made this webinar so critical, because the media told a different story here. And I think we were all blindsided by that. So Yasher Koach, first of all, to Doron and to Gael, who I know have agreed to stay later. I don't know if we can get another 15 minutes, but for those I see most are still on from the beginning, and thank you again for doing so. I just want to say one last thing. The comment about partnerships has come up in almost throughout the entire chat here, and I think the message of partnership of Mizrachi going back for at least the last 5 years has been tremendous. We all see that impact, and I'm very hopeful and optimistic that in 2025, it's not too soon to start planning. One thing that was very clear this past election, I could say just from my volunteer side, seeing how seeing how the election played out, the reform and other slates, I won't name any particular slate. They invested heavily, not just in the financial side, over time. They started to plan this in 2015 for 2020. It's very clear to me, and would welcome creating perhaps a subcommittee exploration for the years to come. I don't think it's too early to start talking and thinking about the next stage. I know that happens in elections in countries. I'm sure that will happen soon over here. Hopefully not again soon in Israel. We don't need more and more elections, but we must be united, and we must be unified. And I think the ground has really been laid here to do so, and to continue to do great things. So we thank you all for joining. Once again, we'll share this with you privately. Thank you, Rav Doron. Thank you, Gael. Thank you all. We also want to acknowledge Harvey Blitz, chair of World Mizrachi, who I know has played a key leadership role all across, and I neglected to mention that. So thank you. So many mentors, so many amazing people here. I cannot acknowledge them all, but I do want to say how excited I am to be in this role at Religious Zionists of America, to play a convening and collaborative role to continue to carry the Mizrachi movement message moving forward. So thank you all for joining, and wishing you all a great rest of the day, and Laila Tov to those in Israel. Thank you.